another quick video here. I think we went over this before when we were talking about the curves for the hand. So if we're looking at the angle of the arm, right? So first thing I usually do, even if you're starting out with a square like this, the only changes you're going to make, you're going to be curving it one way or the other. So that means that if we have this here, and I went in and did a curve here, do a better curve, right? It would be the opposite for the other way. Right, so if this is our arm, right, and we know the arm's going kind of like forward, but it's being placed inside this sleeve, right? So our curve, of course, is going to be the other way. So when we do our outlining for the arm, we're going to have a curve, right? But we're going to have a curve like so to make the arm round going into the sleeve, right? Same thing you would do here, but it would be the opposite way, like so, right? The next step, since we are dealing with the sleeve, let's go ahead and match that kind of as close as we can get it, and get our sleeve line back because we made that circle too wide, right? We're looking at the same thing that we did for the arm, right? And this is without shading yet. We'll do the shading in a second, right? So we're looking at a curved line. So if we start from here, right? Can have a curve that'll go like so, like this way, right? So if we extend the sleeve out, so we're exaggerated sleeve like a I don't know, a wizard. All right, there we got our curved sleeve, right? So even if we're doing the outlining, the only really thing that I do here, I would put a little lightener right about here for the sleeve. You can make that as thick as you want it, and depending on the style of the outfit, right? So if I come in and I want to even do another line, but let's make it a little bit lighter, right? So if I do a line here, very thin line, I can make that bigger or smaller based on what the look you're going for, right? So think about the way this line is. If we're looking at a sleeve usually you'll be able to see the outlining, right? To give this, if we're using this black here, it gives the impression as if this is the shadow between the actual, like he's wearing another shirt underneath, right? So this would be part of the first sleeve, right? And if we do our outlining, basic black outline, we'll make that a little bit thinner, like that, right? We still have our curve happening for the sleeve, right? So if we look at this angle here, so if we already know this is going to be the end of our shirt here, right? So if it's curved in, we see where this curve kind of ends, right? If we're looking at it from this angle, everything's good, right? But on the other end, if we're going underneath the arm, right? So think about that. That would be here, right? Because technically this part that you would be adding here would be behind this arm. not in front. So this will be the front part, right, that we drew here. We could see that. This element here is going to be a little bit darker because we're actually seeing a little bit of the inside of the sleeve, but we're at an angle where we can see it, right? So this part here would be a little bit darker, but still able to kind of make the see the difference between too many lines, what the sleeve would be, right? So even if we know our arm will end there at that point, right, depending on how we want the sleeve to look. But remember, if we have this line that we already created, we already know how thin the line is going to be on the back. So that would be, and I'm just highlighting with this so we can kind of see what's going on in the back of the sleeve, right? So we know this is a thin sleeve. This is going to be the same thing here on the opposite side or the back side of the arm, right? And sometimes what I'll also do is make another line here. All right, so close up, and so we basically created that, right? So if I came in, you do start doing your shadows. Doesn't really matter. As long as we can distinguish between where that starts and where it ends. And keeping in line with whatever this curve here is doing all the way on the opposite side. So darken all that other stuff. So if we know this line comes here, we just got to follow that all the way through. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? So when we get to this point, we know that we can't see at that point. This is the darker point, but where the angle is, we can't really see that, right? So everything here, so when we do come back and we actually make this line dark, it should be here, right, for the width of the arm. Right, so we still have the curve for the arm, right? So if we're looking at this, the last part would be the shadowing for the arm, right? So if this is the watch here, I can come in And usually I'll do the shadow on top, so I have another layer I'll add here, so that we're not painting on the actual arm, just in case we make a mistake. Right, so I take this color of the arm, and I'm now on top, the top layer. So when I come in for the shading, it depends. I do a little bit lighter, something darker, but I can change the tone a little bit. Let's see what that looks like here. Alright, we like that, that's okay. Alright, so when we come in and do the shadowing, right, so if I have this here, as far as changing my tone for the arm, right, we have that. Then this would be also shadowed. That means that we wouldn't be able to see a lot of it, because there's a curve in the arm, right, that we want to keep. And then of course you would have underneath here would be a little bit darker. And I'm just using a tone because I'm gonna use a different thing for the kind of like the tint here, right? So this is just me adding some color. So if we have the arm here, part of the arm is going to be in the sleeve, right? So the shadow would start right after this line, right? But making sure we keep that curve all the way over through. So if I take this and come in really close, but just enough to where we can realize the line between the arm and the actual sleeve here, right? And if we're doing it straight across, be careful with these, because we don't want the arm to look like it's broken, right? So this line here is going to be our straighter line than the one underneath. It really doesn't matter at that point, right? So we have that here, right? We still have the curve for both in and out, right? Now, if you come in and then you do your shadow, all right, we've already added some color, and sometimes what I'll do with the color, you know, you could play around, do mixtures, and kind of, you know, change some, you know, a little bit of the way that it looks. Just depends on how much you want to do. I don't need to do that for this because this is not going to be a big deal. So now if we're, again, I did another blank layer on top of everything. So if I make a mistake, I can come back and erase if I don't like the way the shadow looks, right? Alright, so we'll go black, and then we'll go about mid here on the opacity. Make sure this is on normal. And let's play around with how dark we want it to look, right? So if I make this a little bit darker, got the shadow there. This shadow is going to be a lot thicker than this one where the watch is, right? So it'll be a little bit thinner, something kind of close. Maybe a little thinner, and this is based on whatever you like. It doesn't have to be exactly. So when you get to this arm here and you start doing the tint, if this is the outside of the arm, technically it would be a little bit lighter, but that's going to be your choice here. Usually what I'll do is I'll keep this one tone here. Sometimes I'll make it a little bit darker by doing half. Depends on what you want to do. It could be that. Some people do that. They like the way it looks. But what I do here with this is whenever I do find the shade I like, if you want to blend this without having to worry about doing it by hand, you just come in, and since it's on top of everything separate, oh, we messed up a little bit there. Alright, so let's go ahead. We're gonna I'm gonna show you this real quick. So right now, I'm gonna remove the background because I don't need any of it. Maybe we need to see. No, we don't need to see. Alright, so if I go back, it's wrong one. Which one did I do? All right, there we go. All right, there. All right, so if we're looking at this here, right, and I wanted to actually have these separate. All right, so right now we just have the color for the arm. Go back. Oop, wrong one. Can't remember which one did I add it to. Alright, there we go. Change this label S. Alright, so right now we have our color here. This is just the part we put on the arm, and this is the shading part that's on top. Now, alright, so this is just the color, right, on top of the arm. Now, if you don't want to blend this, or even if you don't want to blend the shadow part here, I'm going to do two different things. So if I come in, alright, so this is our shading. So what I'm going to do here is, if I duplicate this, and then what I'm going to do is hide one of them, and I can choose what to kind of clip out of this part, and that's what I'm going to do here. Alright, so this is our shadowing. It's on the top, right? So since I don't like the way this looks here, I can come in and just make any change I want by just using the eraser, right? And what I want to kind of keep is the part for the sleeve, right? Just like so. And I'm going to go ahead and combine all the ones. So we're going to take the arm, the color, and then this little piece here. Remember, we duplicated it, so we have that left over, but we're just going to merge this little part, this arm part, the color for the arm, and then the arm itself, like so. Alright, so we'll just merge down for those. Alright, so now we got one whole piece for the arm, and we can get rid of this because this was a template for earlier. Now we still can play around with this little piece here for the shadow. Alright, so if you can't blend, or you don't want to blend, what you can do here is we can blur. So we can take this and we can go to effects, blur, like that. So it'll give you some options to play around with. Though the larger you make this, the more it'll spread. Right, so if you go 2, you can look like that's what you're getting there, and you can just keep going and going as you like. This is good for if you're trying to make, I don't know, a face look dirty or something like that. You can kind of blend it like so. But I'm going to keep it right about there. It's right where I want it. And what you can also do is, whatever you don't like here, you could just erase whatever parts you want to keep as far as the shadow, right? whatever you want to do there, right? All right, but I'm going to keep this for now, and I'm going to merge. Well, I really don't want to merge it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this arm and just save that for later for the extra work I got to do. There's a lot of layers here, but just ignore everything else except for the layers we're kind of playing with. Alright, so I'll bring this back, and now that I've already saved this, I don't care what happens to this part here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and add a blur effect again here, like so, and then click OK. Alright, and you can see that we blurred this part, and then we got our arm, right? And we'll just merge those together, and that's pretty much it. You want to just keep everything around. Now if you wanted to come in and do some extras, and there's a couple things I got to do here. Fix this watch a little bit. And this is all before the vector. And the vectors, what makes you'll see the difference. It makes it look a lot cleaner. That's all it really going to do there. A little bit less good. And that there. And that side a little bit. That here. And And again, if you're not doing close-ups, a lot of this you could kind of ignore. It's not a big deal for you to have to do all of the extra parts. But this is, we're going to be doing this before anything gets vectorized. So it's a little bit different for me. Outline. Now, if we're looking from this side, we just want to make that look a little bit thicker, right? So the curve would go here, but it would end at a certain point. Because the vantage point would change. So this would here would be a little bit thinner than going around on the other side. Same thing here. We're looking at it from the angle. This should be the thicker side. These are kind of like those, I don't know, that boxer kind of glove thing, where it's kind of soft in certain areas there. We would keep the same guideline here. This doesn't matter because it would be separate. This would be a rounded out. Like so. The creases we don't really have to worry about. If you want to use this as a padding piece, that's what I'm going to do for mine. These angles here, as far as the thumb and the hand, you would still keep this dark and bring this all the way up. It would be a little bit closer, but when you got in here, you just would make it a little bit darker. So if we're looking at tones, you want to keep the general, I usually say 3 colors, because after that it starts to look strange, which could be good for whatever if you're doing it that way. When you make marks, as far as like kind of cotton looking things, you can put little like crevices in there. So most of the time you can go a little bit lighter. So if you want to add little extras for that kind of thing, you can. Any curve that you have here on the hand, you just gotta remember to keep that same curve all the way around for the first couple fingers facing inwards. So I usually will do that here, and I'll make the determination whether or not this would be, but everything would be rounded here. You would do kind of like, I don't know, I call it McDonald's, but it's kind of like, let me draw over here. It's kind of like this kind of thing for the hands, and you would just keep that no matter what angle it is. So this angle would be jumping from here, and then you would go smaller as you come in. But if you're drawing gloves, it's a lot easier because you can make everything a lot more, I guess, bulgy would be a word I would use, I guess. Probably not a real word, but anything that you have on the opposite side, if you have to come back, you can always do that. When you do that, you just kind of make it things as light as possible, and then kind of bring it up if you can't see it. But any shadow would still be there. It would just be curved all the way around. Anything underneath would be darker, of course. But you would keep the same kind of elements going all the way around, and then the further you go out, the less concerned you have to be. If we're looking at this aspect of, these are the fingers, and these are rounded down. If it's from a side view, kind of like this, you can get away with a little bit more, because most people are not going to be, it's further away. But the thing that's going to help you here would be the shadow. So even if you do you want to make this these curves a little bit more pronounced, you have to remember about the crevices in the fingers, and you would continue to do that. These lines, anything that's further back from where you start, just got to remember, well, make these as dark as you possibly can. From here, you would go darker, so just continue to get darker the opposite way. And stuff like this, if we're looking at it, that slant would be a little bit higher, and anything after the I would say second finger, you can just make it dark, because this is technically very far away. And I'm going to show you that when we spin back in from the other side. And anything here, we would still have that same curve. So coming up from the top, we know this kind of dips down, right? Has that little pieces that are going to be here. Same thing you would do here, and then so on all the way down. Make this more pronounced, because this is going to be visually what would be closer. So as you get further and further down, when you go back and you do the shading part, you could start wherever you like. I would say the second finger really wouldn't matter. From, I would say, there in. This part would be a little bit lighter for trying to make the distinction, and anything that you want to kind of put shadows on after the fact, you can. And again, if you do the shadow the other way, you can still do the blur, or wherever you want the shading to be. If it's on the actual watch, it's usually on the outside. And those other lines you don't really have to worry about. If you want to make them more pronounced, you can, for each one. And then template wise, I wouldn't worry about anything too close up, making it rounder, but depends on, you know, how much you want to do. We're looking at the watch from this angle, right? So if I'm looking at this from the opposite way, this would be this line would be kind of gone, because this would be all shadow between here with the other side of the watch. This color would just have to branch out all the way over here, so we already know that color is a kind of darker brown. When we come back from, be able to see it from this angle, it's a little bit crazy bright, from this side, right? So it would still be a thin line coming through on the other side, and then when you get to this joint, to make it kind of join together, just add the shadow all the way across. So when you do come back and you have the line, or you come back and you do your line work and then all the other the extra bits, and all of these extended pieces that you want to add, it doesn't really matter here as long as that curve is still the same. This part here, if we're looking at it from this angle, technically that would be there. We would be seeing it from that certain vantage point. So you can use lines to make it seem like it's coming from the other side, right? So if we're looking at it from this would be a slanted angle coming up. I'm sorry, going up and then out like so. I'm gonna make a little curve there just to do it. So this would be coming up. So when we got to this part here, this would be a little bit darker than this part, because we're coming in. This is a weird watch because it's a sci-fi kind of thing. So if we're looking at the angle from this part, everything here, you could make it dull. So if you wanted to add or make this a little bit thicker, you could do that there, or you can just use the shadow to kind of play around with things you want. On the edges, if I want it to be like, oh, it's a little bit more shiny in certain areas, all you have to do is make a line and kind of blend it into what's already there, and extend it out as you like. And you can make those different by just changing the tone just a little bit, like, let's do it here. So if you want to have it kind of like the same tone just come back with a light touch. You just want enough tone to where it doesn't look flat. And then anything extra would just be filling from that distance. You won't be able to really see it. Same thing, you would starting from this angle and do just slight changes to it there. Alright, and keep that darker than the other part. Just same thing here, because technically this would change here because it's too deep. Alright, about there. There we go. But you could play around with the all the edges that you like. And the hard part is going to be if you're doing a lot of detailing before you vector it, you're going to have to pretty much I would say pretty much start like a new thing, but you have a template that you can go by if you remember all the angles that you want. And then when you come back and you start, you know, doing more details or whatever, when you do have it vectorized, you'll see the difference between that. You just got to make sure things are not like squared off like you began. Whenever, you know, because that's what it'll look weird, it'll catch the eye. So when you look at it from a distance, you want the elements of a watch to be there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but close enough to where you can come in and then doing all the shadows and everything like that. And you would do the same metrics. Oh, that's not right. For anything that you want to highlight. So if we look at the sleeve here, we know that's well defined. You would do that here as well. And remember, we have our wrinkle. This is on YouTube. I apologize. You're probably just seeing a part of what I draw. But trying to make some shorts, so I kind of cut it up. But same thing here. Even if we do this, we can come back and we can kind of highlight what we want. But we want this to just that sleeve to jump off of this part here, so it looks like it's not flat, that it's pushed out a little bit further. And then even if you go over the tone, just remember to just come back with the shading and come back. Sometimes when I do this, I will come back and do some, I don't know, I call it like clothing marks, you know, the little marks that you see at the certain points of a shirt or whatever. Usually they'll be in that little middle, kind of like where the sewing starts, and it'll usually track all the way up and throughout on the shirt. Like you'll see it kind of like marks that on the edges. You know, take it out of the dryer or the washer. It's got those little, you wash it, that little piece kind of folds up a little bit. And then the shadow would get darker here, and that would change. So this particular character is going to be kind of riding on something, so the shadow would change. But if you're just drawing this out before you vectorize it, this needs to be a little bit darker in here. And you would technically be what I call two tones, meaning that you would have this here, and of course this area here would be changed a little bit. The only thing we're going to do here that's going to be different is we're going to cut this out, and I'll show you why. Cut it out, I mean like separate it. First, let's go ahead and grab everything. And head part 2. If you're on YouTube, this is just me we're breaking down a character, and we're going to be vectorizing all parts of the character. So we're drawing it first, and then we're going to use Inkscape to vectorize the drawings that we put together. So go grab that. If you Adobe, whatever you're using, all you have to do is select it and copy. And if you're using Inkscape, you just paste, and it'll bring it right in. Usually, it'll do that with everything in Adobe. So go ahead, and we're going to duplicate this. We'll call it arm 1, and we're going to duplicate this. You can do it twice. Actually, do it not twice, 3 times. All right, I think that should be good. So when we come in here, before we start putting the pieces together for MOHO, we're going to cut this, and this part here, we're going to start here. Just cut this like so, right to where our shadow, like halfway between our shadow. All right, and here, get rid of this for now. And we're going to go ahead and cut kind of high here. Keep that circle when you were cutting out. Just keep that as circular as you can where that arm will be. It doesn't have to be perfect, because we can use black to fill in what we need there later. You can take this piece out. Alright, so we got our sleeve. Next here, we're going to go ahead and go to the others we duplicated here. And sometimes I forget which one. So next thing we're going to do here is go ahead and grab the hand by itself. Try to do it as best as possible, but I'm going to cut here and cut all the way out the watch. When we put in the watch in, the watch is going to be on top of the hand, right? So go ahead and cut it right to where that black line will start, like so. And then what you'll do for the hand, and this doesn't have to be perfect either. Actually draw underneath, it'll be quicker. So we'll bring, and just make sure you keep our curve. We're drawing actually underneath the layer behind it, so it's a little bit easier to get it as close as we want. Right about there. Yep. And we're going to go ahead and fill in from the top angle. And we don't care about that part because it's going to be angled in, and the watch is going to be on top of this area anyway. But make sure you make this the further away thinner, then the closer it comes in. Alright, so this will be, when we're adding anything, just remember what's the closest point to you, and then what's the furthest thing away. There we go. For our hand. And that's good enough there. Let's merge that. And we'll grab the hand here. And we're going to end up taking the fingers apart for the hand, and I'll tell you why we'll do that as well. But we'll color this in and fix that up, and that's why I wasn't concerned with getting it to perfect, because all these fingers are going to be separated for our animation. Edit, copy. piece. Alright, so we got our hand. Alright, so we got our hand, we got our arm. Not arm, so now we need our sleeve and our arm. Let's go back and grab that. And we can use the same one because it's kind of separate. We're going to be just grabbing it out of here anyway. I'm going to go and cut all of that out here. And remember, we already have, don't worry about the arm. It's going to be separated. Now with this here, you got to be careful, right? So we're going to put a hole right about here. Because this part is going to be, we're going to have something that comes in the back, but we want it just about like so. And again, when we're cutting these out, it doesn't have to be too crazy perfect. Shadow, you can do it as you like, but that should be okay for now. We can come back and change it if we have to. We're going to go ahead and grab this here. And go ahead and bring that in, edit, paste. Alright, so we got that. And when we bring this into MOHO, these separate pieces, and before we vectorize everything, we want to be able to move the sleeve around. So technically, when we do kind of put this back together, anything that we mess up as far as like the arm or make anything bigger than we need it to be, what we'll do is make sure we have a backfill of just black. And so if you make a mistake or want to change something, you can go back to paint, but remember, everything's going to be layered inside the animation. So what I mean by just filling black here, so if I take this and this goes behind this arm here like so, and we'll just push it back. Now we have that. Now when we bring this in, this would be on top, so you're able to kind of conceal anything that way, right? So when we do animate this arm and it's moving around, really it'd probably be a good idea to cut everything out here, but for this particular one, it's not a big deal. And the reason why black's going to help you, right? So when we start going in and animating and making these changes to the arm, right, the black helps us with any spacing that we want to do. So if I know this black is always going to be behind where this is going to, this arm is going to be, that means we can cut out all of this to kind of make the adjustments if we want to. But on this, we don't really need to. So think about it this way: if we don't cut this all the way close, right, and then we start moving this arm around, you see here, this should not be there, right? So the black, again, it'll be your best friend. Now, even if we wanted to use this, if you don't have all this cut out, you can still do it. And what I usually do, if I want to keep this certain angle, then you would move to putting this on top. So let's duplicate this here, right? And I stick this here. Remember, we have our back piece that can give us safety there, and then we can hide the other part, but we would hide it like it's a shadow, right? So if I come in and I bring this down a little bit, and I could kind of manipulate where I want the shadow to kind of be, you can kind of get away with just doing it that way. But if you're truly going to do a full bend, you want to have a piece like this with the whole piece, and then you could flex around and do it that way. But this is what you would need for the arm, right? So we have our hand, we have our sleeve, or I always call it top arm, and then your bottom arm, and then the hand. The reason why this is a little bit different, because we're adding another element. Technically you would just be a hand and a sleeve, and that would be it. It wouldn't be this big of a hand though. It'd be something normal like so, right? So if you're doing a normal character and it doesn't have a watch and you're not showing the wrist, you don't need all the shading and you don't need anything except for this part. But that's what you would need if you're bringing it into MOHO. Not need. This is how I would do it. And all of these things have to be separate for a reason, and you'll see that in the part 2 of what we're going to be putting together here. But for the arm, we're going to stop there. And thank you guys for this. This one is going on YouTube. This is a breakdown of a separate video, just to keep them short on YouTube. Most of the videos are very long because I'm doing it step by step. But this may help someone if you're just trying to do an arm, or trying to do the shading and things like that for when you're just coloring and doing blending. So I hope that helps.